For the first time in my life, I finally accepted that depression is actually real. You see, I used to be one of those guys that would watch a lot of self improvement videos, a lot of motivational videos, and would trick myself out of the reality that most people face, which is being either depressed or being in a constant state of what we call the rut. Now, the whole purpose of the video is not going to be highly edited. It's just literally me being as raw as possible with you guys, which is my audience, and also keeping to the promise that I actually set out when I started this YouTube channel, which is to do two things. So, number one, make sure that I'm serving God in everything I do. And number two, making sure that I'm serving people to the highest capacity. So last year was one of the best years I've ever had within my life. But at the same time, it was one of the most trying years, especially towards the end. You see, I had finally proven to myself that I could be successful in business. I had finally accomplished some sort of financial stability. And after constantly grinding and grinding and grinding away, it was finally my birthday and I decided to actually fly out to Cyprus. As soon as I got back, literally a couple of days after, I got a call from my mother, right? And she said to me that, son, your grandfather has passed. Now, in that moment, I didn't necessarily know how to react because, again, it was the first time in a very long time that I'd experienced death around me. And I remember being so I don't even know how to even say it, like, being so confused. Like, what do you mean? I remember one of my boys was actually there when I got the phone call, and he said, "Bro, you good?" And I said, like, "My grandfather just passed," and I had to take a bit of time myself, and I spent 5 to 10 minutes just to myself, kind of just confused. I came back into the room and then almost acted as if though nothing had literally just happened. And I remember it wasn't until the next day that when I was in the shower, I actually broke down crying. And yeah, it was a very, very sad moment because I hadn't necessarily had the opportunity to speak with him, to conversate with him in a very, very long time. And that guy was a G, like such a legend, such a legend. But after that, literally 2 days after me finding out that I lost someone very, very dear to me, a business and a venture that I had spent a majority of the year trying to build and pouring a lot of energy, etc., into came crashing down due to the nature of the venture that I was pouring a lot of attention and energy into. I started receiving quite a lot of threats, death threats, all sorts of things. Not a lot of people actually know about this entire story. So for those that actually watch this video, you're gonna be probably the one of the first few. I think my mum didn't even know I was even going through this until literally like last week. Bearing in mind all this stuff was happening in the past like 6 months. She didn't even know I was going through any of this until last week. And she was just like, how do you do it? Like she actually asked me, how do I do it? But outside of all of that, anyways, I didn't necessarily even get a chance to even reflect and even just take a chill pill. I'm still having to run businesses. At the time, I had staff and employees that I had to pay out wages for. I still was on a mission to retire my parents, so I was making sure I was sending money back home for that. I had investments that I had to keep on top of, etc. Before obviously I had to let them go. But there was all sorts of things that was just coming my way, coming up my direction. People that I had cared about and I thought that because I had poured into them, bearing in mind I'm the type of person that I will, and hopefully you guys can tell by the amount of value I give on a daily basis when it comes to the YouTube channel, and if you actually bump into me in real life, right? I'm the type of person that if you come to me with a problem or you ask me for advice, I'll always go above and beyond to deliver on your expectation. So the same people that I'd always been there for, again, they were nowhere to be seen. It was dark. It was dark. It was so, so dark. It wasn't until I would say even last month that I was able to finally not only accept it, but start to return back into reality. You know, the reality of knowing who I am, knowing my purpose, and fighting past it, fighting out of the rut, fighting out of the depressive state, fighting out of defeat, fighting out of calling myself a failure, and actually just realizing that it's just another lesson. It's not necessarily to, downplay situations or whatever had happened or anything like that. The purpose of this video is just to share with you guys a mini system that I was able to hone in on and utilize to get myself out of that depressive state, the rut. And hopefully, as I'm just sharing what helped me, is also able to help you guys as well. And hopefully you can tell sincerely, by me sharing the context of what had happened and things like that. But without further ado, let's hop straight in. Now, before we go into the 5 things that I did to get myself out of that state, I want us to set the correct terms and all be on the same page, right? And also preface that I'm not a clinical therapist or not a professional, etc. So by no means take what I'm saying for gospel. Please seek professional help. I'm just documenting what worked for me, right? So the term, being stuck in the rut, if we were to look at it, it is described as the feeling of being trapped in a negative mood state. So it's not just about experiencing, the sadness that you feel, but it's feeling as if though you can't ever get out of it. The first thing that I kind of did was just acknowledge it. The first thing I had to do was just accept that this is the reality right now. And I find that the biggest thing that stops, especially high achievers, from wanting to admit that they're going through something or they've, hit that rock bottom or they're in a rut phase is that they're scared of admitting that they finally hit that state. They're scared of letting go of who they've worked so hard to be because it makes you feel less than. You're scared of what other people will think. You're scared of the fact that if I accept that, okay, right now I'm in a rut, I'm depressed, maybe I'll never be able to get to that point again of being a high achiever, etc. And what we fail to realize is that unless we accept it and acknowledge that this is what we're actually going through, we will not be able to develop the systems to actually move past it. It's about being brutally honest, bringing it to the forefront of your mind. And another thing that really helped me identify this was that I just started to document and journal how I was feeling and having conversations with myself, being honest, being brutally honest and saying, okay, cool. Right now, I, I'm not the guy I usually am. I feel a change. I feel less than right now. And by documenting all these type of things, you're able to start actually honing in on how you're feeling and start to address these type of issues head on. Which leads us to number 2, which is the ability to hone in. It's about actually identifying what started it and what is contributing to you being in this state right now. You need to identify the root cause. Now, this can be very, very hard to do, especially for yourself. You need to actually seek professional help, right? So one thing I actually did was to seek therapy. So not only had I identified that, okay, A, B, and C had happened. So A, for example, me experiencing a loss. B, for example, me experiencing, business failures. And C, me feeling disappointed or abandoned by, people around me, etc., which is again a whole different story. But with me acknowledging these type of things, I still needed to be in therapy to speak and discuss it and explore what was actually going on with a professional. You see, when you actually go to therapy and you're actually speaking with that therapist, they're asking you questions, they are digging into the problem and actually trying to get you to explore it in depth. The entire experience of identifying all those type of things and actually discussing it with another person is very, very scary. It's very, very scary, especially for, I would say for guys as well. You have the whole masculinity thing where you have to be extremely tough all the time and, strong. You have to be dependable. You have to be a rock, etc. And I know that again, we're in a society that doesn't necessarily promote that, but I come from a background that embraces that, and that's what I typically embrace anyways for myself. So I was living up to that standard, but in this moment it wasn't about just living up to that standard. It's also understanding the opposite side of it. I'll give you guys an example. I refer to King David, right, in the Bible quite a lot. With King David, he was a man after God's heart. He was someone that, again, he became the king. He was able to win wars. He was able to be a great leader, etc. But he was also very, very, very much flawed. If you study, for example, some Psalms, there will be points where, again, this masculine person being King David, the person that everyone wanted to be, your favorite hero's hero, he got so vulnerable with the Most High. He was in the public eye, again, a strong figure, etc. But when you're actually reading those Psalms and actually studying everything he's saying, this guy was pouring out his heart. He was pouring out his heart. He was being honest and saying, listen, I'm defeated right now. I feel A, B, and C. This is what's happening, etc. And he was being vulnerable. I would definitely encourage two things, right? So if you are of faith, number one, you need to consult God. That is, it just goes without saying. Number two, consult a therapist. And number three, you need to consult wise counsel in that order, right? So again, consulting God, it goes without saying. You need to address it and be like, okay, cool, A, B, and C is happening right now. This is how I'm feeling right now. Show me the way. Navigate, right? With a therapist, you discuss it in, you could say, the physical realm, saying this is what I'm feeling, A, B, and C, etc. And bringing that to the forefront. And of course, with wise counsel, this is not at your discretion. You can tap into the experience and say, okay, cool. Have you ever gone through what I'm going through right now? Tell me a story of, okay, how you were able to overcome it. What were some lessons you've been able to learn, and etc. So even a video like this, I know that it might not apply to all people, but I know for a fact that there's going to be someone that watches this video and hears what I'm saying and is able to actually be like, oh, what Sam went through this, or what Okiki went through this, and he's still able to do A, B, and C, etc. It's not about me being any, big person or anything like that. It's about me actually showing that it's possible to get out of. And that's all that someone needs sometimes to actually motivate themselves to get out of, that depressive state. So I'll definitely say that you should seek wise counsel, especially at the end. But in saying that, it moves us onto the third point, which is about disrupting the pattern. I tend to find that being in that type of state, because yes, it's happened once, guys, I'm not going to lie. We're human beings. It may actually happen again, of you being in a rut, of you feeling the type of way, of you feeling less than, etc. Ruts tend to just be loops. Typically, on a normal day, we're over here and we're going literally through life in this type of cycle where, you have, for example, your work, you have, for example, your friends and family, you have, for example, some hobbies. You basically have things in your life that just make your life, what it is. It makes you happy, it makes you feel whatever it needs to be. Alongside that, you can also have what you could say your purpose, etc. Then all of a sudden, you have something that occurs in your life that breaks it over here. So that loop that it used to be where, you're having a normal life, etc., is now broken. And all of a sudden, you get removed into a new cycle, which is this loop, which is what I like to call the rut loop. So what is that? If we were literally just to drag this person, being myself at that point, or being in yourself, we start to feel things such as, despair. Something goes wrong and then we feel like a failure. Something goes wrong and then we feel as if though we're not worthy. Something goes wrong and we have an inner voice basically telling us that, again, we can never amount to any success or whatever it is. And we're constantly stuck into this and start to adapt new habits and new cycles that keeps us in this constant fear zone, this constant rut zone. And it's not until you identify it and actually not only identify it, but discover ways to again break it. And don't get it twisted, guys. It's very, very hard. What ends up happening is that you end up going from that depressive state into this new state over here. He's lost his legs, so let's draw new legs. Cool. So you end up going into this state over here where, for example, instead of you being in that usual environment where one thing that happens with me quite a lot is that if I'm in a rut, usually my desk ends up being like, there's all sorts of stuff on my desk. It just ends up becoming so cluttered. My room ends up becoming cluttered. I might not even lay the bed. Simple things like that. Another big thing would be, for example, I might not go out anymore, right? So usual networking events, etc. I'll just literally spend the entire day either in my room or spend the entire day just working and using it to escape the pain. That's one thing that I actually identify with my therapist, that he said, listen, like you work so much. Is that maybe a sign that you're using your work to escape the pain? And I think when he said that, there's some things that I'm not gonna lie, like I take with a pinch of salt, but I really identified with that. But whole different conversation in and of itself. Back to it. So again, your environment. That environment that was once here in the despair zone where again everything's cluttered, etc. Simply by changing your environment, you can actually start a new pattern to that freedom, to your old self, or even to a better self. For example, cleaning your room, laying your bed. And funny enough, I remember Jordan Peterson used to talk about this quite a lot, actually. He used to talk about how even just by waking up and laying in your bed, you'll be so surprised how it can actually contribute to you feeling a bit better, etc. Now, by no means am I saying that just by laying in your bed, you're going to be able to overcome everything. But it's about those small wins that you basically do. So that's another thing, actually. Small wins. So remember, with environment, it's changing your current environment to be better and cleaner, or get in less negative environments. So that could be, and these two things are tied. That could be simple things like the gym. It could be in workspaces. Another thing I like to do is actually go to restaurants or basically go to where rich people are, if that makes sense, right? Affluent people are. Not necessarily for the superficial reasons that a lot of people would go to, but that's simply because it just inspires me personally. So go to where high net worth individuals or people that are just successful in whatever they do are mingling, right? It inspires me personally. So you start embracing small wins, the small win of, okay, I woke up early again. I was able to go to the gym. I was able to start eating healthy again. Because another thing that I do, for example, whenever I'm in a rut, I start eating all sorts of junk. Like I start eating so unhealthy and it's so bad. It got to a point where I hadn't been in the gym for months. And for someone like myself, yeah, I don't have a six pack or anything like that. But if you see me in the gym, I'm quite strong. Obviously, I got, some sort of muscle, etc. But all jokes aside, on a serious note, it's not necessarily a case where I was, with a six pack or anything like that. But I try to eat as healthy as possible, and that makes me feel better. In this state, I'm just eating unhealthily. I'm, you know, eating as much junk food as possible. McDonald's becomes basically my best friend, you know? And in saying that, outside of that, through those small wins, it's about becoming again. So what does that mean? Remember, we are creatures of habit. So the things that you do on a constant basis ends up becoming the type of person that you end up being, right? So for example, you wouldn't be a fit person if you didn't have the habit of consistently being in the gym. You wouldn't be a disciplined person if at one point you were maybe undisciplined and you trained yourself, your mind, your body, and your soul to start becoming disciplined. You wouldn't necessarily be wealthy or rich if you didn't have the habit of getting money, keeping it, and multiplying it. Things like that, right? So we want to become the type of person it is to be, again, outside of this despair loop, this rut loop. It's about doing the things that it takes to, again, get you in that type of state where it is much better. So part of that is affirming. Part of that for me personally is simple things such as prayer. Meditation's a very, 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 very big one. Very big one. All my days. Meditation is so, so key. And outside of that, what ends up happening is that, again, this cycle keeps on repeating. There's so many other things as well that you can do over here. But this cycle keeps on repeating, and then you go from, again, this despair loop into this new cycle, which is not only the person that you used to be, but even better. That leads us to number 4. This is now talking about purpose. So every single person has been sent here on a mission to do something. Identify your purpose. Identify that not only do you have a purpose, but you are able to achieve it. Right now, you may be in a state where, for example, you haven't actually achieved that purpose, you haven't achieved that goal, etc., or achieved this, a better version of yourself, whatever it is, but you are able to. You are able to through what? Time, through effort, and through consistency. You are able to do it. And in saying that, after you do that, again, I'm just going to buttress from all of this stuff. It's about becoming. So you're not trying to be that better version of yourself, anything like that. You become the better version of yourself. You start to operate in a manner of, okay, a successful person does A, B, and C. No worries, these are my new habits. Someone that is mentally strong does A, B, and C. Okay, these are my new habits. So some things that, for example, I do is that I make sure that I get back in the gym and I start training as hard as possible, right? Because I understand that if I wake up, I get in the gym, train as hard as possible. I'm now training my mind to understand that, listen, yes, you've been in this state. Yes, you're going through this, but guess what? You were able to lift up that heavy weight. Guess what? You can lift yourself out of this situation you're currently in right now. And then number 5 is accepting that it will be okay. Remember what I was saying before, where, for example, you have this is you at the beginning and this is you right now, where you may be going through a rut, you may be going through a down period, etc. But if you allow yourself to do 3, which is disrupt the pattern, you allow yourself to assign your purpose, through time, through efforts and consistency, and eventually get out, guess what? You're building up that muscle to actually push past it and not only be who you used to be over here, but actually be way better. And the key thing is that we need to identify and understand that it will be better. Like with time, things get better. With consistency, with believing in yourself, with not giving up on yourself, things do get better. Like always, reflect on a time, for example, where you had, a setback or a failure. I'm pretty sure that you were able to kind of bounce past it. And that is the reason why you are where you are right now. And sometimes I always love to remind myself of those instances because it shows that if I was able to get through it back then, guess what I'm able to go through right now. And of course, I understand that the circumstances that maybe I've gone through is a bit different, it's a bit more intense. But guess what? Someone's been through it before. They were able to go through it. They were able to come out on top. And guess what? If they were able to do it, I can do it too. It's understanding this and also accepting the fact that, look, at the end of the day, as I ascend and I become, bigger, I become more successful and I get past this whole rut stage, there will be another point in time where, I'm not going to lie, you will face maybe another challenge or something like that. And whilst I'm not praying or wishing that, again, you guys go as deep as, the depression or a rut or anything like that, what I'm saying is that you will face some sort of setback that will knock you off your game if you allow it to. The whole aim is that hopefully through to learning today's system and actually identifying and actually growing past and growing stronger, we're able to next time, instead of us actually going back down to this state over here, which is depression, etc., we're able to actually never go past a certain threshold. And hopefully what ends up happening is that, again, eventually we're able to get better, we're able to, climb on top, etc. And then when another point happens, again, we just keep on going higher, 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 up until a point where, again, we call it quits and we go about our day to the next life, right? So in saying that, I know I said quite a lot there, guys, and I know that it's not necessarily the edited videos that you guys tend to enjoy, etc. But this is just me being as vulnerable as possible and showing you guys, for example, not only what's happened in my life, but showing that as I was able to get over it and develop a system to help me get over it, hopefully sharing it with one or two of you, you're able to also benefit and actually get over it as well and understand that entrepreneurship, life is not as glamorous as what is made out to be on social media, where you go on TikTok, you go on Instagram, and you just see people just partying and being happy and all that type of stuff all the time. If that is the reality of life where you're happy all the time, then guess what? It is no wonder as to why people feel the type of way that they do right now. As to why people aren't motivated and they feel as if they are, because these people are always happy and I'm feeling these type of negative emotions, there must be something wrong with me. It's not that there's something wrong with you, it's just that these people are hiding the fact that they go through stuff as well. And hopefully, as I'm being vulnerable and allowing you guys to see the side of me, you're able to see that, yes, as someone that is going to eventually be successful at whatever they do, you also go through these type of states, right? And God willing, you guys were able to not only watch this video, but benefit from it. And yeah, comment if it benefited you. Feel free to share it with a friend. I know it was a long-winded video, but yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.